That is face validity. So let's move on the more technical validities that we should discuss. Okay, another types of validity is construct validity. So before we delve deeper on the discussion of construct validity, let's do some revision. So what is a construct? So a construct is an informed scientific idea develops to describe or explain behavior. Okay, in other words, construct is an abstract concept that we develop so we would be able to explain human behavior. So construct are unobservable, so we cannot observe because it's an abstract concept. Okay, it is an underlying traits that human being possesses, but test developers assume that we can explain those underlying traits based on the test behavior, based on the performance of our respondents on the test score. Okay, this based on our test score or based on the criterion performance. So construct are unobservable underlying traits that test developers assume to explain test behavior or criterion performance. For example of constructs, intelligence. So we've mentioned quite a number of times about intelligence, anxiety, job satisfaction, personality, depression, and etc. All of these are examples of construct in psychology. So when we want to develop a test, we want to measure a construct. We want to measure a scientific idea. We want to measure an abstract concept. And these concepts, this idea, it should be able to explain certain human behavior. Okay, so besides what is construct, okay, is some revision that we need to go through before we discuss more details about construct validity is how construct relates to theory. Okay, the importance of the relationships between theory and the constructs. Okay, why we need to understand about theory? Because the nature, the effects, the implications of the construct, okay, any given construct that we want to measure, are informed by the underlying theory. So it's related to the theory because theory explains the nature, effects, and implications. Besides that, theory also uh, give us the informations about the causal factors, okay, the outcomes and the implications of the certain construct that we want to measure. Okay, all of these are derived from the theory. Okay, at the same time, theory also explains the construct dynamics. Okay, what it refers by construct dynamics, the changes in the variation in status of the construct, whether the construct is high or low, may also be explained by the theory. So theory is very important for us to understand about the construct. So when we talk about construct validity, it may also relate on what the theories explain, what are the foundational theoretical aspects of the constructs. Okay, so those are two important things that we need to revise in order for us to discuss about what is construct validity. So what is construct validity? Construct validity is a judgment or an estimate about the appropriateness of inferences drawn from test score regarding individual standing on a construct. Okay, it's quite technical, and I do understand this. You have to think like this: when you develop a motivational scale, for example, so we are expect that those who score high in motivations, they also have high level of motivation. Okay, so in this case, when I answer the test and I score high, people expect me to have the characteristic of high motivated persons. Okay, who have high internal drive to do things. Okay, who really motivated, who are really committed, who are willing to put on efforts and commitments to achieve my goal. Okay, why? Because this is the expected characteristic of high motivated people. Because my score is high on the motivational test, so people may make an inference that I will have those characteristics. Okay, someone who are driven, someone who have high drive, okay, high motivations to achieve my goals. Okay, how can people make this inference? Because I score high in this test. Okay, this would allow us to make an inference about the behaviors, the characteristic of high motivated person. Okay, why we can do this? Because the test demonstrate a proper construct validity. Okay, so construct validity will allow us to make an accurate inferences from the test score. Okay, so the reason why we need to understand construct validity because it gave us the indications, the evidence that the construct, okay, the motivation just now really measure what it's supposed to measure. Okay, so in this case, people consider construct validity as the most important validity among all of the available validities that we are going to learn. Okay, because of why? Some researchers, for example, Cohen et al. 2022, they consider construct validity as the unifying concepts of validity. Okay, for them, construct validity has been considered as the umbrella validity. Okay, this umbrella validity, they cover every other variety of validity falls under it. Okay, the content validity, criterion validity, all are measuring construct validity. Okay, that's why when you go to some psychometric books, okay, some psychological assessment books, so they would explain on the one type of validity, which is construct validity, and among the methods to establish construct validity are content validity and criterion related validity. But here we are going to discuss construct validity. So, okay, similarly with other types of validity, which is content and criterion. So according to IRA and APA, construct validity has been viewed as the unifying concepts that I mentioned just now for all validity evidences. Okay, all types of validity evidence, including evidence from the content and criterion related validity, which we are going to discuss after this, come under the umbrella construct of validity. That's why some researchers, some psychometrics and test developers consider construct validity as the most important validity in our area. Okay, that's why people would try to their best, okay, to establish evidence of construct validity as opposed to other types of validity. Okay, so having said that, okay, there are many evidences that we can find to support, okay, to provide evidence that our test demonstrates construct validity. Okay, among others, homogeneity of the test, changes with age, pre-test, post-test changes, distinct groups, convergent and discriminant validity, and lastly, the factor structure. Okay, before we move on, I would like to uh, remind you, based on my observation, I've noticed that when people or when students discuss evidence of construct validity, they are usually focusing on only two types of evidence, which are convergent and discriminant validity. I have to admit that these two are very famous when we talk about convergent validity, but you have to remember convergent and discriminant are not the only two evidence. Okay, they are many evidences, okay, including homogeneity and etc. So we are going to discuss in more detail every of these evidences in the next section. Okay, among the evidence of construct validity is homogeneity of the test. Okay, evidence of homogeneity. So what is homogeneity? Homogeneity refers to how uniform a test is in measuring a single construct. So basically, we refers to a test that measure only one construct. So the antonyms of homogeneity is heterogeneity. Okay, you will find a lot in your study after this, homogeneous test and heterogeneous test. So an evidence of construct validity is the test only measure one thing. Oh, the test only measure one construct. Okay, we refer as homogeneity of the test. So how can we gather the evidence of homogeneity of the test? So one of the methods to gather this evidence is by looking at the correlation between subtest scores with the average of total test score. Okay, what is subtest score? Okay, imagine like this. If your test is multidimensional, okay, your test have more than one components or one domain or one dimensions. Okay, say for example, motivation just now. So I developed a new motivational skills that contain three components. Okay, three components. Component A, component B, and component C. Each of these components is considered as a subtask. Okay, is considered as subtask. And all these components can be summed up, they can be totaled up. So the total score of component A, total score of component B, and total score of component C, if you total up, you will get the total score of the whole test. So what is meant by correlation between subtest score with the average of total test score? Here, when you average out the three scores for the three subtests, and you take that average and you correlate with the total score of subtest, okay, component A. For example, we should also find a positive significant correlation. So this indicates that our test may be unidimensional, may be homogeneous in nature. Okay, besides by using these manual correlations, we can also use factor analysis to find the indications of correlations between subtests as well as the total average total test of the score. Okay, so we are going to discuss about factor analysis in the last part, okay, in more details. Okay, beside correlation between subtests and the total test score, we can also find evidence of the homogeneity of the test using item total correlations, not inter-item, okay, item total correlations. So we correlate between items, the question in the test, and the total score. So we are expecting positive, significant positive correlations. Okay, beside item total correlations, we can also find evidence of homogeneity from item analysis, in particular by looking into item discrimination. Okay, item discrimination indicate the discriminatory power of the items. Okay, you have to imagine like this. We will always have two groups of respondent who score high and respondent who score low. Okay, we do not consider respondents who are in between. Okay, in this case, if the item have a discriminatory power, so that item should be able to discriminate between high scorers and low scorers. In other words, high scorer will be able to answer it correctly, and low scorer will not be able to answer that item correctly. So that means that the items uh, possesses discriminatory power, the item discrimination, and this will also points towards the homogeneity of the test. Okay, one of the evidence of homogeneity of the test. Okay, so beside homogeneity of the test, we can also gather evidence of constructability by looking at the changes with age. Okay, so the changes with age, the pre-test, post-test changes, and distinct groups, these three important evidences should be informed by the theory. Okay, remember when we talk about the relationships between construct and theory. Okay, theory inform us the relationships. Theory inform us the changes that may happen if people are growing up. Okay, some construct are expected to change over time. Okay, for example, reading ability, memory performance, moral reasoning, or maybe an intelligence. So in this case, if we going to test the level of intelligence of a 16 years old man or 16 years old boy or teenagers, so we expect that after 5 years the level intelligence will increase. Okay, will increase. So if the person's score is 50 at the age of 16, so we expect that at the age of 21 the levels of intelligence will improve. Okay, for example 90 or 100 in this case. So the test score increase or decrease as a function of age. Okay, changes with age. So what tell us about these changes is the theory. Okay, the theory inform us that there will be a different score when someone is younger as compared to when he is older. Okay. Another informations that are related to theory, which theory already predicted in that way, is the pre-test and post-test changes. Okay, so if you recall what you have learned in research methodology class, okay, there is a research design. We call this as within between research design. Okay, in this case, we have to assume that people who wants to use this design, they want to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions, the effectiveness of training programs, for example. So in here, we are going to conduct a pre-test, okay, before they go through these trainings. What are their level of education? What their level of motivation? What are their levels of resilience, for example? So after they gone through the therapy, after they go to the training programs, so we expect that their skills will improve, their resilience will improve, their motivation will improve. Okay, so how can we get this indication? By comparing the test score of post-test, okay, after the event, and compare it to the pre-event test, okay, the pre-test. So test score obtained after some event or the mere passage of times, okay, post-test in this case, differ from pre-test score as theoretically predicted. Okay, so these examples of event in this case could be formal education, a course or therapy or medication or job experience. So what is important to understand is the theory inform us that if people improve on their coping, for example, so they would be able to manage their emotion better, manage the stress level better. So if we provide interventions on coping, so they will not be able to, they will be able to manage their stress better after the intervention. So the pre and post test changes. So another evidence of construct validity which relates to the theory, okay, what theory have predicted, is distinct groups. Okay, test score obtained by people from distinct groups vary as predicted by the theory. Okay, also known as method of contrasted groups. One way of providing evidence for the validity of a test is to demonstrate that score on the test vary in a predictable way as a function of membership in some groups. Okay, you have to think like this. Okay, distinct groups here means that there are at least two groups. Okay, if we take motivation as example, there will be one group of people with high motivation and another group of people with low motivations. And if we look at the comparison between these two groups, people who have high motivation must also demonstrate characteristics which differ from people with low motivation. Examples, people with high motivations, they are self-driven, while people with low motivations, they don't like to initiate things, they only follow others, for example. So the characteristic between the two groups are different. Okay, same goes to examples, uh, constructs from clinical perspective. Okay, depression, for example. People with high depressions, okay, they may have some suicidal thoughts, but these suicidal thoughts may not be present for group with no depression. Okay, so they are contrasting characteristic between the two groups. So how we know this is based on what have been predicted by the theory. Methods that people can use to establish evidence of distinct group is using contrasted groups methods. So another types of validity, okay, not another type, okay, another two types of validity relates on the methods where we try to find the evidence, which is the correlations. So if you go through Cohen 2022, the fifth evidence of construct validity, as mentioned by the Cohen, is the test score correlate with scores on other tests in accordance with what would be predicted from a theory that covers the manifestation of the construct in questions. So these also can be considered of construct validity. Okay, the correlations of the test score from the test that we want to develop or the test that we newly developed with a score of other tests. Okay, a score of other tests can be in the form of convergent evidence or discriminant evidence. So what is convergent evidence? Evidence for construct validity can come from correlating the test score with other measures, such as other tests measuring the same construct or measuring similar construct. Okay, convergent evidence refers to a test score correlate highly in the expected direction with score from older or validated versions of the test measuring the same or similar construct. Okay, imagine like this. If I want to develop a motivation test, there are already many motivation tests in the literature, okay, in the net, okay, on the net. So these tests, some of them or most of them already validated. Okay, they have proper evidence of psychometric properties. They have evidence of reliability. They have evidence of validity. When I want to develop a new motivation test, I can use these older tests, okay, the already established tests, and I can compare the results. Okay, I can correlate, not compare, I can correlate the results. Okay, I go and collect data for my newly developed motivation test, and I also include the older version of the motivation test. So in this case, I was hoping that the test score between the newly developed motivation test will have high positive correlation with the other test. Convergent evidence for validity may come not only from correlation with tests purporting to measure an identical construct, but it can also coming from correlation with measures purporting to measure related constructs. Okay, related constructs. So example given here, a new test designed to measure the construct of intelligence. For example, WES 5. Okay, but this WES 5 is the fifth version. So the identical construct is the WES 4, okay, the earlier versions. So we are expecting that if we collect data for both versions of the test, WIS 5 and WIS 4, we are expecting high positive correlation. Okay, at the same time, if we measure a related construct, okay, for example, SB5, measure intelligence but different components, okay, different domains from WIS 5, okay. In this case, we are expecting also positive correlation, but maybe not as strong as between the WIS 4 and WIS 5. Okay, in between moderate to high correlation. Okay, so these are convergent evidence. Okay, we try to correlate with some things similar or identical. Okay, the test they already established, they already have evidence of validity. Okay, if our test also have positive high correlation or positive correlation, we can say that our new test demonstrate convergent validity. Okay, on the other hand, beside convergent validity, we can also establish discriminant validity. So a validity coefficient showing little, in this case, what is meant by little is statistically insignificant. Okay, relationships between test score and or other variable with which score on the test being construct validated should not theoretically be correlated. Okay, in the case of intelligence, for example, you have to think a simple way. Okay, can a persons who are intelligent at the same time being so-called stupid? Okay, so simple answer is no. Okay, do not look at your life. Okay, sometimes intelligent people can also be stupid. Okay, for a certain cases. Okay, there's a joke. Okay, you can hear. An intelligent person cannot be a stupid person at the same time. Okay, in other words, intelligence should not have positive correlation with stupidity in this case. So in this case, no correlation between waste 5 and back depression event 3 because they are not related at all. So we are expecting for discriminant validity to have no correlations between the discriminant measures and the test that we want to establish is validity. Okay, discriminant validity. Okay, another methods that we can do to find evidence of construct validity is through factor structure. Okay, some textbooks use factor analysis, but this refers to the same concept and process. So here we use factor analysis as the methods for to find evidence of factor structure of the test. Okay, the test that we want to establish the validity. So what is factor analysis? So as a review, factor analysis is a data reduction method. Okay, a data reduction method used to identify the underlying relationships between a large set of variables by reducing them to a smaller number of latent factors. Okay, the purpose of the factor analysis is to identify the factor or many factors in common between test score on subscales with a particular test, or the factors in common between scores on a series of tests. So basically, when we conceptualize a test, for example, as a multi-dimensional construct, so we conceptualize motivation as a three components test. Okay, you have component A, component B, and component C. So we expect that when our respondents answer the test, they will also understood it the same way. So we are expecting when we conduct factor analysis, the data will reduce into out of 15 items, for example, the data will reduce into three factors. So these three factors may reflect the three components that the test developer has conceptualized. So there are in common two ways that the test developer use to establish factor structure evidence of construct validity. They can use exploratory factor analysis or they can use confirmatory factor analysis. For exploratory factor analysis, we use to estimate or estimating or extracting factors, deciding how many factors to retain and rotating factors to an interpretable orientation. Okay, so basically, test developer usually employ EFA, exploratory factor analysis, early on during test development process. Okay, when they have done it, okay, during validation study, they employ confirmatory factor analysis, which is researchers test the degree to which a hypothetical model, which includes factors, fits the actual data. Okay, so what the model here? The model here refers to the conceptualized components. Okay, for the motivation, there are three components: component A, B, and C. So item 1 to 5 supposed to measure component A. Item 6 to 10 supposed to measure component B, and items 11 to 15 supposed to measure component C. Okay, those are the hypothetical model. So in confirmatory factor analysis, you want to see whether the model fits the actual data. Okay, we see whether people interpret it the same way as being hypothesized or has been conceptualized early on or not. Okay, so when we conduct factor analysis, we would like to find evidence whether the data that we gather really show consistency with how it's being conceptualized. So the first evidence from factor analysis that we would like to gather is the dimensionality. Okay, whether the data shows that it's unidimension or multi-dimensions. Okay, it's based on being conceptualized. So if we conceptualize a motivation as multi-dimensional construct, contains three components, so the factor structure should shows us is multi-dimensional. Okay, in this case, it relates to the second conclusions or second evidence, which is factor solutions. Okay, in this factor solution, it helps us in identifying the underlying structure of the data. Okay, the underlying structure of the data by grouping related variables into meaningful constructs or latent dimensions. Okay, these latent dimensions or components refers what we call as factors in factor analysis. So here, when the test already given us is multidimensional because more than one factor, okay, what we expect that it will also demonstrate or find or give us the result of three factor solution because we conceptualize the motivation as having three components. Okay, so we expect to have three factor solution. If they give us more or less than three, then this is not supporting the conceptualized model of the motivation. So here we are expecting to have at least or to have the three factor solution. And to further enhance the evidence of construct validity, we expect that each item like being conceptualized, item 1 to 5 under component A, 6 to 10 under component B, 11 to 15 under component C, they should also demonstrate the same way. So under factor loadings, okay, factor loadings represent the correlation coefficients between observed variables and the extracted latent factors. Okay, factor loadings indicate the strength and direction of the relationships between each variable and a factor. okay, helping to determine how well a variable contributes to a particular underlying construct. So in this case, we are hoping all item 1 to item 5 under one factor. So this factor 1 may represent component A. So 5 item 6 to item 10 load under one factor. This one component should represent component B, and item 11 to item 15 should load under one factor, and this should represent component C. So these three evidences we should find from the result of factor analysis. Okay, the dimensionality, the factor solutions, as well as the factor loadings. Okay, all of these are the 7 evidence that we can gather to provide evidence of construct validity. Okay, so beside this, we are going to discuss further in the next section on another 2 types of validity, which are content and criterion related validity.